Hello and welcome to Everyday Lessons Every Day. I'm David McBee. Based on my book by the same name, this podcast is for those of us who believe in personal growth and want to improve every day. This is episode 23, Your Mood Determines Your Reality. So yesterday was one of the hardest days I've had in years. Not sure how or why, but I woke up not feeling myself. Actually, that's kind of an understatement. I woke up feeling sad. No, that's still not a strong enough word. Melancholy, maybe? I think that the closest word is depressed. But maybe I just don't want to admit that label fits me, the self-improvement author and podcaster who's always happy and positive. But there it is. The truth is that despite all my reading and studying of the self-improvement world, despite all the feedback I've gotten from the people I've helped, I was as sad as I can remember ever being. At one point, I remember trying to decide if I had a chemical imbalance or low testosterone or something else physical going on that might explain my mood. I literally felt like a different person. I wasn't so far gone that I was unable to get out of bed, but I sure didn't want to see or talk to anyone. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to watch TV. I didn't want to read or eat or exercise. I just didn't feel like doing anything. And worse, I didn't care about anything. Have you ever had one of those days? It's like you're so down that you don't even want to get back up. You just want to stay in your misery and wallow in it. That's how I felt. But with my daughter at home, I really didn't want her to see me that sad. I guess it's okay to be vulnerable in my podcasts a day later when I'm past the worst of it, but I was embarrassed to be around her. I didn't want her to see her father feeling so completely unhappy. So I got in my Jeep and I drove. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just drove. I ended up at the lake, watching the sun rise through moist eyes and just thinking about all the reasons I was sad. I have so much going for me and so much to be grateful for, but I simply couldn't focus on any of it. I could not get past the negative. I kept reflecting on the impact the pandemic has had on my family over the past several months. There's been a financial toll, so that's part of it. But more than that, my whole family is dealing with things that we've never had to deal with in the past. My wife has had to teach the hybrid model for the past few weeks at school. That resulted in her having to deal with new technology, which she's pretty good with, but parents and students are struggling with, so of course that impacts her. And now that everyone is going back in person, she has 20 plus kids in her room, and social distancing just isn't a reality when you have that many kids. She's lucky to keep them 2 feet apart, let alone 6. So of course, she's worried about their health and her own, and I'm worried about her. She's doing the best she can, but she comes home exhausted and stressed every single day. Meanwhile, my sweet social daughter misses in-person school and being with her friends. I hate to see her alone all day in that back room. Sure, she's Zooming and Snapchatting, but it's not the same. It has definitely taken a toll on her personality, her mental health, her relationships, and her happiness. My son's car is in the shop and has been for nearly 3 weeks. Every time they fix something, they find something else wrong, and now we're looking at having to completely replace the engine in a car that is 15 years old, by the way. We didn't need that bill out of nowhere. He's actually handling it much better than I would have at his age, but now I have to find some money to loan him. Oh, and that reminds me, our fridge broke, so there's that. Meanwhile, I miss my old life. I miss traveling and speaking to people in person. I miss shaking hands and hugging friends and sharing a meal and helping people grow their business and helping salespeople to be more successful. I miss the crowds and the applause, but mostly I miss the laughter. I am not ashamed to admit it. Virtual meetings are fine, but I've been feeling an emptiness in my soul that can't be filled via Zoom. I want to get in front of a room or on a stage with all eyes on me and nobody on mute. I heard a comedian once say that all comedians are sick, that they've chosen the hardest job in the world because the only way they feel love is when an audience laughs at their jokes. I guess there's a part of me that totally gets that. Not feeling totally fulfilled by the day-to-day work I can accomplish from my home office, I crave a live, in-person response to my presentations. But I think the thing that had me down the most was that neither of my passion projects have taken off the way that I'd hoped. Neither Everyday Lessons Every Day nor my children's book DJ's Off-Road Adventures have been selling well. I've invested a lot of time and money in both and don't really have a lot to show for it. Heck, it's been a month since my last episode of this podcast, and no one even seemed to notice. I don't even know why I'm doing this. I guess for me, for my family, for the handful of folks that listen. I'm starting to think maybe I wasted my time on these passion projects, putting so much time and energy and money into them. So this is what's going through my head. I'm sitting there at the lake alone, wallowing in my misery, and I decided to go ahead and call my dad, see what he had to say about all of this. When I told him I was feeling sad, I didn't care about anything, he was kind of shocked. His initial reaction was, believe it or not, to scold me. "You have too much going for you to feel like that, David. You don't have a right to be this upset." In hindsight, I know he was totally and completely right. But in the moment, his words just made me mad. What do you mean I don't have a right to be sad? I can feel sad just like anybody else. Then he reminded me that people were dying from the coronavirus and I was in good health. He said that people had lost their jobs and that even though I had suffered a little financial setback, I was still doing better than them. He reminded me that I have a beautiful, thoughtful, and patient family, and not to mention a great dad. Of course, he would say that. All true, but it didn't penetrate my shell. Like I said, I was low. I didn't even want back up. I just wanted to sit there and hurt. When he realized that he wasn't getting through, he kind of changed his tone and he said, "David, I don't see how you can be this sad. You are the most positive person I know." To which I replied, "That's great, Dad. Do you know what kind of pressure that puts on me to always be positive all the time? That just makes me feel worse." I really was being inconsolable. Then he used a strategy on me that I often use on my friends and family when I'm trying to make them feel better. He asked, "If it were me, David, feeling bad, what advice would you give me?" "I'd probably tell you to read or listen to something positive." "Then do that," he said. "Follow your own advice and write a word on your wrist that's going to keep you focused and get you out of this funk." Whatever. I knew he had me, but I wasn't in the mood to give him the satisfaction, so I assured him I'd be fine and I hung up the phone. By then it was nearly 8:30, so I headed home to work. I had a call with my team. I wasn't my usual happy self. They probably noticed, but they could sense I didn't want to talk about whatever was bothering me. I had a Zoom training a little later, and I thought about canceling it or postponing, not sure that I was going to be able to give it 100%. I guess that's what finally forced me to change my thinking. I couldn't sulk all day. I had responsibilities, and no matter how I was feeling, I had a reputation and didn't want to let anyone down. So I decided to take the dogs for a short walk, and I listened to the audiobook Creating Miracles Every Day by Richard Carlson, the same guy who wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. I've been listening to this one on and off for a few days now, but most of it was a lot of the same stuff I've already learned in the past, and nothing was really hitting home or inspiring me. And then it did hit. Richard started talking about the conversations we all have in our heads and how often those conversations are self-defeating. He talked about how they can influence our mood in a negative way. And then he said the thing that really broke through, that our mood determines our reality, that it's not the other way around. Think about that. You're in a good mood and you have a good day. It's not you have a good day so you're in a good mood, which is what most of us tend to think. But it's really not true. It starts with what's going on in our heads and our hearts, and that is what impacts our day. Remember that old self-help poster? I think it came from a store called Successories. Remember that place? It said, "Your attitude determines your altitude." Total self-help cheese, if there ever was, but also totally true. I know it's true because I have people in my life who are constantly in a bad mood, constantly complaining that life isn't fair or that the world is out to get them. And you know what? They're right. Their reality does stink, and they do have a lot of things going against them. But is that because the conversations in their head are negative? Is it because their mood is low and that impacts their reality? I know other people who have just as many things going against them that are always happy. In fact, when you compare their actual circumstances, often the person who has less going on is happier than the person who has more. Surely you know people who are happy, even when they're struggling, even when life tosses them curveballs. So what do they know that the unhappy people with lots going on for them don't? My dad is right about one thing. I am one of the most positive people I know, and I always have been. Is it because I'm super lucky and things always go my way? I don't think that's it. I've had my share of setbacks, layoffs, health problems, issues with jobs or relationships, but I normally don't focus on those things, choosing instead to see the positive and to be grateful for what I do have. My good mood determines my good reality. But over the past several days, I spent a lot of time thinking about all the things the pandemic had taken from me. And my reality was starting to match my low mood. I felt like everything was going south because that's all I was thinking about, what had gone south. So I took a big green Sharpie and I wrote the word mood on my wrist. I was determined to change my mood in the hopes that it would impact my reality just as Richard had promised. I put a stop to all that negative self-talk cluttering my brain. When I started to think about something not going right, I switched to gratitude instead. When my wife got home, I asked her about one of her favorite students instead of the overall issues she was dealing with. That actually led the conversation in a more positive direction. I saw how independent my daughter was becoming, partially because of online school. And I was reminded that she does get to see her friends at band practice and softball. The car dealership where my son's car is being repaired called, and they finally had a plan that would get his car fixed. They even made us a really good deal. Meanwhile, I enjoyed walking my dogs and had a great virtual training. I felt such gratitude for my team and my job because you know what? It is a good one. I make good money and I'm valued at my work. I may not be getting the applause and the laughter that I crave, but my boss and my peers show their gratitude in other ways, and that's more than enough. By the time I went to bed, not only was I not sad, I was smiling and laughing and back to my usual self. The pandemic is still here, and a lot of the things that had me down in the morning are still happening. But my mood had changed, and things just looked different to me. Want to hear something else that's totally crazy? I got a call for an independent speaking engagement that's going to put a little extra money in the bank, seemingly out of nowhere, but I don't believe that. I feel like the universe came through for me because I had shifted my thinking to one of gratitude instead of negativity. And so I challenge you, write mood on your wrist and pay attention to how your mood impacts your reality. If your mood is low and your reality isn't awesome, do whatever you have to do to change your mood and see if your reality follows. For me, it was as simple as walking the dogs, listening to a positive book, and shifting my thoughts to gratitude. For you, it might be meditating or exercising or singing a song. I just ask that when you're down, and especially when you feel like staying down, consider doing something to change your mood so that your reality will follow. Let me know what happens when you implement this lesson by reaching out to me personally or posting your story on social media with the hashtag #EverydayLessonsEveryday. And if you like this podcast, please share it with a friend. Let's see if together we can make the world a better place. I'll see you next time. Now go out there and do something awesome.